Yeah, done a bit of hiking as well with Nick in the past too. So yeah, just to sort of give you a bit of an idea of a few things you can do obviously with your upcoming expeditions, just to sort of guide your body, try and make it a bit more enjoyable because it's not fun if you get injured out on the track there. So just this was actually just an article that was published in the Sunday Times earlier in the year where I basically talked about the same things. So just some simple sort of prehab sort of exercises or injury prevention stuff. But I'll obviously go a bit more in depth with you guys with a few things there today as well. So this is basically what we'll run through. So I've sort of broken up into two sort of areas. So a bit of hiking and prehab stuff. So this is stuff that you can be doing now in the lead up to when you go on your expeditions. And I like to sort of think from the ground up basically. So starting with foot mobility and strength, because your feet are what are taking a lot of the load when you sort of on track hiking ground, particularly uneven ground, that sort of thing. So if your feet aren't in the right shape, that puts a lot of pressure and load up the rest of your body, your knees and hips, things like that. So it's a perfect place to start. So obviously foot mobility, just make sure everything's nice and loose and moving well, and definitely a bit of foot strengthening as well. It's often an overlooked area where if you actually get the muscles sort of in the arch of your foot a bit stronger, that can really absorb quite a bit of load and help help the rest of the body there as well. Definitely some sort of calf strength and ankle stability. Obviously, a lot of sort of uneven, track you'll be walking on, so really important to make sure you're good there. And then with it sort of higher up the body, hip and knee strength. I like to think of single leg stuff when it comes to hiking because you're never really on two legs. Like some other sports, you say basketball, volleyball, stuff like that, you're jumping on two legs. Hiking, it's always one leg, particularly if you're stepping up, stepping down, lots of things like that. So you need to be nice and strong on one leg and obviously nice and balanced there as well. And then just in terms of small track maintenance stuff, just a few little tips and tricks there. Skincare is really important. You don't want to be getting blisters. It's not fun. I'm sure you've all probably been there if you've done some hiking before. Just some simple sort of mobility stretches just to keep everything feeling pretty good from day to day. Obviously some pretty long days out there. And then just a quick few little things about some hiking poses as well. So starting with the prehab stuff. So in terms of some foot mobility and strength, 3 simple little exercises that I like to do. So toe flexion, toe extension, and what we call seesaws as well. So I've just got some quick pictures of everything just to sort of show you. You can not really see it that well, but basically there's just a rolled up towel on the ground here. So toe flexion is getting your toes into a sort of pointed down position. What you can basically do is get a rolled up towel, something just sort of raise, and pretty much just get your toes up like that. Just slowly sort of bending your knees forwards and backwards like that, just until you feel a nice little stretch through the top of your toes, top of your feet like that. So super simple one. And then opposite to that is toe extension. So that's trying to get your toes pointing into enough position. If you think about every time you walk, you get into that position where your toes are sort of pointed up. Obviously really important when you're sort of pushing off, particularly on like soft sand and stuff like that when you're hiking as well. So again, can't really see it, but his toes are just elevated on the towel there. So just something to sort of get your toes up. And again, it's just sort of bending your knees in and out like that. On the handouts that you get later, and this is sort of how long to do these exercises for. As a general rule, all of these ones, about a minute at a time. It doesn't need to be for too long, but just enough to, get a good little stretch through there, get those toes into a position where you just feel a little bit of a stretch, and then that's just going to help, get fed used to those sort of positions there as well. And then these are a little bit more of a strength-based exercise. So what we call seesaws. So basically, if you picture starting with your toes, all your toes up here, and then you want to alternate between sort of just putting your big toes down and then just your other little toes, alright? So just sort of alternating in and out like that. If you're doing it right, it should almost feel like your feet are about to cramp because all those little muscles in the arch of your feet are working quite hard to do those ones. So again, do those for about a minute at a time. Just starts to strengthen up the bottom of the feet there, which is quite important. In terms of sort of calf and ankle strength and stability, a couple of real simple ones here. So I'm sure you all know what calf raises are. Again, you can do them just on a raised surface. So this is just like a little, almost like a half foam roller if you've seen those. Again, use a towel, use a step, something where you can just sort of, let your heels hang down and then be pushing right up. So nice and slow and steady with those ones. terms of, ankle stability, any sort of balance exercise is going to be really helpful. I like just a single leg balance exercise where, again, so this is on sort of a little balance beam. Again, use a rolled up towel, just something a little bit unstable. That's really going to challenge, obviously, the ankle, but also sort of the foot to have to hold that position and keep everything nice and strong through there. So they're pretty straightforward, those two. And then, just in terms of general leg strength, hip and knee strength, like I said, I like to keep it single leg because that's more specific to the type of strength you actually need when you are hiking and when you're walking. So squats and hip hinge sort of movement. So single leg squats, pretty self-explanatory. What you can do is if you actually, again, with your little towel or whatever you've got there, raise your heel up. That'll make it a little bit easier because often when people try and do a single leg squat, it's the ankle that doesn't let you get much further. So if you lift your heel up, you should be able to get a bit deeper into a position. What you can do is, I recommend starting onto like a chair so you don't fall all the way down. And then you can, as that starts to get easier, start to get stronger, you can obviously go through it a bit more range of motion there as well. So stick your chair behind you, get your heel up and just start nice and controlled, sort of up and down, doing some squat movements like that. These ones will target, they're a little bit more knee dominant, so your quads will start to burn if you're doing them right. Obviously it does use your glutes and hip muscles as well. And then what we call a hip hinge movement. This is a little bit more hip dominant, alright? So what you can sort of see here, so you're standing with slight bend in the knee, and then you're basically just bending over at your hip like that and coming back up, alright? So what this is really good for, again, it tests your balance a little bit, it works your glutes and your hip muscles quite a lot. But if you're sort of doing some sort of squat, some sort of hip hinge movement, that sort of covers most of your bases with your general leg strength there. So any questions about any of those? Do they all sort of make sense, all those exercises? Like I said, you don't need to sit there for hours doing them. Literally about a minute or so on each exercise should be enough to just feel a bit of a burn through the muscles. And then if you can manage that most days in the lead up, literally even for, when do you guys go, like a couple of weeks, is it?
Tuesday for the 12th.
Tuesday for 12th, yep.
Week 9, so about the 19th of September.
Yeah, like literally doing that for a week, you feel way better out on track. Like it's not much time to invest, and it'll really help you when you're out there. So definitely try and get some of these if you can. Cool, so a little bit about on-track maintenance now. So starting with skincare, there's sort of three areas I'll talk through. So obviously blisters and how to avoid them, some taping that you can do, and then just a little bit about socks as well. So this is not fun. Basically, the two reasons you get blisters are either friction or moisture. So friction, obviously, spots where there's lots of rubbing, common areas, toes, when your toes are sort of squished into your shoes there, particularly like if you're coming downhill a lot, that'll force your foot into the front of your shoe a little bit more, and they tend to rub a little bit more. The ball of your foot, as you see the picture there, that's generally where you'll be pushing off from every time you're walking, so that's another area just to be mindful of. Heels, again, often shoes or boots, if they're wrapped quite tightly around the back of the heel, that can be an area where it can rub a little bit as well. And then your hips and your shoulders, so this is more in relation to when you're wearing your pack. So your hips, where your hip straps come on, that's where you take most of the weight in your pack. Both the front and the backs of your hips can, again, just be mindful of those areas. If you're getting sort of sore and your redness through there, just keep in mind that they could turn into blisters if you're not careful. And then obviously shoulders, just where your straps sit on top as well. So they're sort of the main areas to keep in mind. And the other thing, so friction and then moisture as well. So whether it's raining on track, hopefully not too much, sweat, particularly in your socks with your feet, just trying to minimise any areas that are where there is moisture, because again that sort of softens the skin and weakens it a little bit, and then obviously more likely to get blisters pop up as well. So a little bit of taping. This is a really good way, a really simple way of just starting to prevent some blisters. So what I personally use, what I recommend is Fix-A-Mole or something similar, which I'm sure you probably know what it is, but it's sort of like the white tape with holes in it, which is the main thing with that is it's breathable. So if it gets wet, it will dry and it won't sort of keep those areas moist. And it basically just creates another layer of protection between the skin and whatever it's sort of running against. So I definitely recommend doing your toes. Now this gets a bit interesting, I'll talk you through it in a sec, but what I personally do is just my first, third and fifth toes, so every second toe, so that way you don't have any skin rubbing on each other. And what I usually say, like you can see up here, they've sort of half done the toes. I say cover the whole toe, you don't want any sort of skin rubbing. So you can do like cover that one, cover the whole toes, and that's everything sort of sorted there. Where else can you go? So you can go ball of the foot, like I saw on the previous slide, just waxing tape sort of right under on that part where the blister is there. Your heel, so it's usually where your Achilles tendon attaches into your heel, so sort of like the upper part of your heel. I'd usually just pop a small little bit of tape there as well, just because that area often does rub on shoes and boots. With your hips, so it's sort of like the top, if you sort of feel the top of your pelvis, you can see on the picture down the bottom right, there's those red bits are where the, the sort of more prominent parts of your pelvis are, so that's where those hip straps are going to sit. So you can quite easily just pop a little tape either on the front or the back if you feel that they're sort of starting to rub at all. Same with your shoulders, just where the straps sit. If you notice that's getting really sore, just pop some tape on there as well. But what I recommend is if you actually just pre-cut some small little strips, particularly for your toes, that way it's a lot easier just, in the morning if you need to swap them when you're out on the track, you've already got them there, you're not trying to cut them in the dark and fiddle around with it, just cut some strips for however many days you'll need, and it saves a lot of time, and it's a pretty simple way of just looking after the feet as well. Cool, and now with socks, these are probably one of the more important pieces of your equipment. So good socks go a long way when you're out hiking. You generally want wool socks, and ideally merino wool are really good for a couple of reasons. So the merino wool is really good at moisture wicking is the main thing. So basically, if your feet are sweating, if the feet get wet, the socks actually sort of absorb the moisture off your feet and then it evaporates off that and it keeps your feet nice and dry. Other cheaper socks like cotton socks, stuff like that, they'll stay wet. End of the day, you'll get there and your feet will be all twisted up. So invest in a couple of pairs of good socks. I do take at least two with you so you can swap, wear one, the other one's drying while you're gone. That will save a lot of trouble and definitely worth, a little bit of money in some good socks. They're a bit more odour resistant as well, which is always nice on a multi-day hike. And then they're actually a bit better insulated too, so particularly if your feet are getting wet and then they're going to start to get cold throughout the day as well, so it just sort of keeps everything going a little bit better. You will find there'll be different thicknesses, which is sort of a bit of personal preference. I just use like the middle sort of medium thickness, whatever that is. And again, sort of depending on the fit of your boots and shoes as well, so you don't want to be squishing thick socks into tight fitting shoes either. Can also go for liners or toe socks, which are on the right there. Again, I prefer tape, but if you like the look of those, you can go for those as well. I know Nick does enjoy wearing those, but up to you. Alrighty, so these are just some sort of simple stretches that you can use on track. So you'll see a couple of them are already in the same as the prehab exercises. So your toe flexion extension, your calf raises, they're really good ones that you can do out on track as well. I've given quite a few here, but what I generally say is do what you need to, alright? So you've got a lot of different ones. I generally say just quickly cycle through them. If you start, for example, with your toe flexion extension, if that feels fine, move straight on to the next one, alright? So just these ones are here to use as you need when you're out there, so you don't feel like you need to be doing 20 minutes of stretching after a day's hiking. Just pick and choose, do them when you need. So I'll just quickly run through them, and again, these are all the handouts that you get later. So we've done the first two, sitting glute stretch. So this is the girl in the pink up here. Basically, sitting down, you can do it in a chair, you can do it on the ground. And the key is to basically hug your leg, bring your knee across your body, alright? You see people doing sort of a glute stretch like this where the knee's out to the side. That doesn't actually stretch your glutes very well. So get the leg sort of across your body, so pulling your knee up to your opposite shoulder ideally. That'll get a good glute stretch there. Your quad stretch, hamstring stretch, you'll know what they are. So obviously quads get like that. Hamstrings you can again do it sitting, you can do it standing, just leaning forward to get a nice stretch through your hamstrings there. Knee rolls, these are bottom left here. So this is actually a low back stretch, this one. So just lying flat on your back, knees bent up, and then just sort of rocking your knees side to side. So a couple of these, good ones in your tent at night, first thing in the morning, just to sort of get everything going as well. So that's a nice simple one. Your cat-cows, top right there. Again, very good one. Do them in your tent if you want, do them out of your tent if you want, up to you. And then just your upper trap stretch as well, bottom right there. Really good one for particularly where the straps will sit. Your traps will probably get a little bit tight and sort of through there. So, like I said, with these ones, you pick and choose, use them as you need. Quickly go through them. If they feel tight, sit there for a couple of minutes doing that stretch. If it feels fine, move straight on to the next one. All right. Cool. And just quick on with hiking poles. So I'm a big fan. Nick's obviously a big fan as well. But really helpful to take up to about 20% load off your legs when you're hiking as well. All right. So they're really important. A couple of ways they help. So on soft surfaces, particularly sand, it'll actually help you to push off a little bit more. So that's not all coming from your legs. But then probably more importantly, actually when you're coming downhill, and particularly quite steep descents, it helps absorb quite a bit of load and also helps with your stability as well. So for example, if it's a bit sort of loose rock or whatever, your feet and ankles, they might not be as safe. If you go to fall, you can basically save yourself with your poles and your hands if you need. And if you've sort of day 3 of the hike, you're starting to sort of feel just a little bit sore, particularly on those declines, it's really handy to have the poles there just to sort of take a little bit of load off the legs too. So I love them, I definitely recommend them. So if you sort of